So for as long as I can remember, whenever I would go and get one of my car windows tinted, I would always go for 15%. And if you didn't know, the rear windows on many modern cars, manufacturers will actually have it stained to around 25%, and that is just because it's really the legal limit everywhere. If you have 25% tint, you're pretty much good. But to me, 25% is like barely anything. If you're paying for 25, it's a waste of money. You really only go 25% when you're trying to stick to the law, because like I said, it's pretty much legal everywhere. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have 5% window tint, which is pretty much the darkest that you can go in terms of, like, you know, widely available. If you go to a tint shop, pretty much everybody's gonna have 5%, even though it's not legal out, I don't believe, anywhere. They will install it for you, they will sell it to you. However, with 5%, I've always felt that it's very in your face. It's very obvious that you have way too dark of a tint, and I've always been worried that, you know, it would be an attractant to cops. They might pull you over, give you tickets and whatnot. So again, I would always go for 15% because it's noticeably darker than 25%, the legal limit, but it is also noticeably not as dark as 5%. So I've always felt that 15% is kind of like your middle gray area where you can get away with. And I've been having 15% for, I want to say, like 9 or 10 years now, and I've never been pulled over for it. So again, I personally feel that it's a safe middle ground, so I've always gone with 15%. That being said, every time I would get 15% window tint, it always looks good, but I always feel that I should have gone darker. And that is why with my new Nissan Frontier, I finally decided to just bite the bullet and go for 5% and just see what that life is all about. So I guess for this video, I want to give you my perspective on 5% tint. Is it worth it? Is it problematic? You know, maybe help you try and figure out if it's for you. So to start off, for this truck, I went with XPEL XR Plus, which is essentially, in my personal opinion, is probably the best window tint that you can get in terms of color, durability, longevity, light transmission, light rejection, heat rejection. Pretty much it's the best on the market right now. And as I mentioned earlier, many cars straight from the factory will have some sort of stained glass around the back of the cab, and this Nissan Frontier was no different. The side, rear windows, and the back of the cab were all tinted a slight shade of green, which equate to about 25%. So for this truck, I wanted an overall 5% look, and with XPEL XR Plus, 5% tint is as low as you can get. So the front is pure 5%, and for the rears and the back of the cab, we went with 15% stacked on the stock 25% stained glass. So you get slightly less than 5%, but you know, it is what it is. It's pretty much as close as you're gonna get trying to match these two. Now, if you happen to be a Nissan Frontier owner and you're trying to navigate through this tinting process yourself, trying to pick out what shade for the front and rear and try to match them, in my personal opinion, with 5 up front and 15 in the back for XPEL XR Plus, I would say that the rears right here, when I come up to it, it just looks straight up black to me. This is what 5% as I imagine. But at the front, when I come up to it, if I get up close, I can make out everything in here. It's not pitch black. This looks like slightly darker 15% to me. So it looks like 10%, but for sure this is XR Plus 5%. I saw it come straight out of the box. It was metered and everything like that. So this is on this truck. It is what it is. I mean, you have a big old front windshield just blasting light through. Pretty much in all conditions, as you can see right now, I am in an enclosed garage. There's light coming through the garage windows, but still, I can still make everything out. But then again, I do have really bright overhead lights on right now. But just keep that in mind. If you are trying to black out your front windows, XPEL XR Plus 5% is not gonna be enough. Next, I want to talk about the general stigma around 5% window tint in terms of like it being too dark and it really hinders your ability to see as you're driving. And I personally feel like that wasn't the case. As somebody who's always used 15%, and 15% to me is like, it's tinted, but it's like no difference in your drivability. Going to 5%, I would say that yes, there was a slight bit of adjustment, but it literally took me one drive to adjust to it. And that's because right when I pulled out of the garage that I had this thing tinted in, it was a dark neighborhood street. Like there was barely any light there, just the light at the front doors of people's houses type of thing. And when I was pulling out, man, it was so dark. I could not see anything to my right, and I just made a big old wide turn to make sure that I dodged everything. And that's largely because I couldn't roll my windows down because the tint is new. When you first get your windows tinted, you can't roll it up and down for like 1 or 2 days until everything is dried. And because I couldn't roll my windows down to just look out, I had to make that big old wide turn just to make sure that I dodge everything. So I would say that yes, in a very dark, dimly lit scenarios where like, you know, you're in a dark parking garage, maybe just like in the middle of the country, in the middle of the mountains where there's no lights at all, yeah, you're gonna have a hard time seeing anything along your sides or the rear. But that being said, anytime that I got to, even at the slightest bit of light, like driving through the city at 9, 10 o'clock at night, I can see everything. It's no problem. I can see headlights, this and that. Really no problem at all. Then on the flip side, driving during the day, I would say that that's even less of a problem. Really, it's no problem at all. There's really no adjustment because you can see everything. Even through the pitch black windows on the back, I can make everything out, no issues at all. Then of course, another major worry that people have with 5% window tint is that it's just so obvious. Man, when you look at this thing, you know, like that guy has some illegal tint. Like there's no way that that is legal. And yeah, that's the case. I would say so. And like I said, all my past cars have been 15% because I was too worried about this. But I personally feel like, you know, a lot of my family members have 5% tint and they've never gotten pulled over because of the 5% tint. Usually, from my personal experience, like cops are not gonna bother you unless you're really like sticking out. You're doing something to draw attention to yourself. Most of the time, they're not gonna waste their own time to pull you over for tint. They're gonna pull you over for doing something stupid, dangerous, and then tack on the window tint because of that, just to make your life harder, just to make the fine greater. And this is not me trying to convince you of anything. This is just how I personally see it. And in my personal opinion, as somebody who's never gotten a speeding ticket, no traffic violation or anything like that, I'm not super worried about it. And at the end of the day, you know, it's my fault. I put this tint on. If I get a ticket for it, it is what it is. Just pay it and move on. All right, with all that being said, I want to give you a few different perspectives of the tint from the outside, inside, and different scenarios so you can see kind of like what to expect. All right, so those are my thoughts and feelings on 5% window tint. Overall, I would say that I'm happy. The fronts could be darker, like I said, but it is what it is. This is 5% already, so there's no darker in terms of going with XPEL window tint. So again, it is what it is, and I plan to at least help remedy this by adding a front windshield window tint, which will greatly reduce all the light coming in from the front, and that would really help to even this out. But that's for another video. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, just leave it down in the comments below and I'll do my best to try and answer it for you because I'm no professional. I'm just a guy who got his car tinted a couple of times, so I'll do my best to answer your questions for you. And if you like this video, I'd appreciate it if you can give the video a thumbs up and share it around. If you want to further support my work, consider hitting the join button down below to become a member of this channel or become a patron on Patreon. Thanks a lot for watching this video and I'll see you guys in the next one.